we know about China is its economic might and growing aggression with its major neighbors. The standoff between India and China is going on the Himalayas over the disputed territory. On the eastern front, China is facing the troubles from its own people. The people of Hong Kong are upping the ante against the Chinese growing encroachment on the city's freedom in a breach of the one country, two system agreement. Hong Kong is marking its 20th anniversary of return to Chinese rule, but hundreds of protesters took to the streets against China's policy. In fact, police arrested pro-democracy protesters before Xi Jinping landed in Hong Kong. Beijing has chosen Carrie Lam as Hong Kong's new chief executive, and to her swearing-in ceremony, President Xi Jinping himself came. Beijing-backed Carrie Lam has been civil servant and was chosen in March this year as Hong Kong's next leader by a 1,200-person election committee full of pro-China and pro-establishment loyalists. As we know, Britain handed over Hong Kong to Chinese rule on July 1st, 1997 under a one-country, two-system formula, which guarantees wide-ranging autonomy and the judicial independence, but not seen in mainland China. In 2014, there was a widespread protest by hundreds of thousands of people who came onto the street and took on with people when China said no to grant universal suffrage to the people of Hong Kong. Under basic law, Hong Kong is guaranteed autonomy for at least 50 years in the agreement with the Great Britain, but China is backing off. Xi conceded on Friday that the one country, two system formula faces new challenges, but that it should not be handled with the emotional attitude. So the signal is clear. China wants to take full control of Hong Kong, and first and major casualty would be the autonomy of the Hong Kong. So what is going to be in Hong Kong? Will the China budge? Sounds quite unlikely, and if China backs off from one country, two system for Hong Kong, then what will happen to Hong Kong's economic hub status? And refusing Hong Kong its promised autonomy is, if compromised, what will be the geopolitical scenario and impact? We are going to discuss in this edition of Public Forum. And joining me for the discussion, Namrata Hasija. She is the Research Associate, Center for China Analysis and Strategy. Welcome to the show, Namrata. And my second guest is Ranjit Devraj. He is a Regional Editor, Enterprise Service News Agency. Welcome to the show as well, Mr. Ranjit. We're starting you, Namrata. Xi Jinping has said and has conceded that the one country, two system faces formula as the new challenges. What does it mean? I mean, faces new challenges mean that he's unwilling to give the kind of, what do you call, the demand or the leverage to the Hong Kongers?
See, I'll take you back to when in 1997, Hong Kong was, there was a handing over of Hong Kong to China. If you see the press, whenever mainland China refers to it, they always refer to it as reunification with China.
Yeah.
And when you read the Hong Kong media, I mean, people who are protesting and who are saying they want to have a pro-democracy who are the participants of the pro-democracy movement, they always say it's the handover. Okay. And not the reunification. So, and when it was, you know, when this joint declaration was signed between Britain and the China, the Sino-Britain joint declaration, which is in 1984. So there it clearly stated, and even Deng Xiaoping stated that for 50 years they will give Hong Kong the autonomy.
Okay.
And it could extend to another 50 years. But look at what has happened in 2014, and not only in 2014.
But was it very clear in that agreement that what sort of economy, what sort of autonomy will be given to the Hong Kongers?
See, it is like the national defense and the diplomacy would be obviously managed by the mainland China, but for other issues, be it election, be it electing their chief executive, or be it electing their legislative council, and how they are running, like, you know, normal like activities, that freedom was given to the Hong Kongers. And that is what they are taking back. So it's not only in 2014, I'll take you back to 2003 when it all started, when Beijing tried to interfere with the basic law of Hong Kong. And at that time also the chief had to resign because he knew that this will not be passed. And that is the time when Beijing actually ruled it out. But now, if you see with the coming of Xi Jinping, I mean, the seeds were planted by Hu Jintao. If you see all the issues, be it the South China Sea or other issues, but he knew when to, you know, kind of step back. But he has given that base. And Xi Jinping, when he was elected, you know, he was elected because they wanted a strong person to carry out the China dream. And that is what he's been doing. So it is not only Hong Kong.
There is also impression in the Hong Kong that the Xi Jinping, when he came into the power, the approach of the China changed. I mean,
Yes, yes.
it has become more hardline,
Yes,
and
yes.
then they are not even ready to negotiate.
Definitely. And I think if you see, there's a steady hardening in the Chinese state. And not only regarding to Hong Kong. If you see what is happening in Tibet, what is happening in Xinjiang, what is happening with Taiwan, everywhere you see how China
and what's happening in the South China Sea.
Yes, exactly. How they have slowly and steadily, they have hardened this stance that they had. And even now, if you see with India, we did not go for one belt, one road. And the kind of clashes that we are having, they're trying to block us everywhere. And the kind of clashes we are having, they are quoting history when it comes to disputes with other areas. But when it comes to Hong Kong, they are saying that the 1984 document is history. And there's no value to it. So it's like when they want it, they can quote historical documents and lay claim to not only Arunachal
conveniently
Pradesh.
They are picking and
yes, they are
choosing.
they are hardening their stance everywhere in their periphery. They are trying to do it. In Xinjiang, the security budget has increased, if you see. What they have passed. Tibet, within 3 to 5 minutes of an incident, security personnel will reach on the spot. Within 3 to 5 minutes. And in Taiwan, after the famous call between Trump and Tsai Ing-wen, and how they have tried to squeeze Taiwan. And cutting off all the diplomatic relations that it had with a few countries. So it's not only Hong Kong. I mean, you can see a steady hardening of Chinese state over the period of time when Xi Jinping came over. And I think it will continue.
Okay, Ranjit, your observation about, I mean, when Xi Jinping is saying that one country, two system formula is facing the new challenges. I mean, and the people of the Hong Kong should not be over emotional about the rights and the agreements. What does it mean? How we should take it?
What it means is what Namrata just said, you know, selective readings of history. You know, whenever it's convenient for them to say one thing, they'll quote one historical document, and when it's not convenient, they'll quote something else. We experienced that. I mean, we know the standoff in the Sikkim area. It's actually in Bhutan. It's not even in Sikkim. But they keep talking about the Sikkim sector. When the Sikkim border is actually settled, we all know that. It's the one part where the border has been settled. But they begin to quote British Raj documents, and then they quote other, you know, convenient documents. Now, when it comes to Hong Kong, it's the same thing all over again. I think, well, Xi Jinping was picked because of his hardline stance in Tibet. He was the administrator there. So, you can see this kind of a hardening across the board, whether you're talking about Xinjiang, whether you're talking about Tibet, the Indian border now, South China Sea, Taiwan, and of course now Hong Kong. I mean, Hong Kong, well, I think they are wary that how do you say, you don't want to kill the golden goose that's laying eggs. I mean, the goose that's laying the golden eggs for them. But they're being very, very firm. I mean, if you insist on selecting the chief executive, that means you're not really giving them any democracy of any type.
But don't you think the China, on its stance, whatever China is doing at the moment, is riling or antagonizing most of the nations, I mean, on the condition, on the cost of the economic relation, I mean, all its neighbors, and especially the countries like India and Sri Lanka, or many other countries?
No, I think a point has come where the Chinese have become so flush with funds that they don't care anymore. So they're not so vulnerable now. They're beginning to call the shots. They're leading many, see BRICS, for example, many of these groupings. They actually swinging their weight, and I think that, you know, people, the other leaders, they are, you know, they're so bogged down with their own problems, maybe the Middle Eastern problems or various other theaters, Israel and all of those, that they don't want to take on China. See, they never took on China in 1950 when they annexed Tibet. They've never been able to do it. I mean, they insist that we have made a mistake by giving sanctuary to the Dalai Lama. They keep on harping on it. I mean, how can they tell us that the Dalai Lama cannot visit Arunachal Pradesh or wherever he wants to go? So there is that hardening. And of course, now there is this anger that, you know, we are not cooperating with their so-called OBOR. And we're not cooperating when they tell us, look, don't get the Dalai Lama to Arunachal Pradesh. the stapled visa issue, and all of those. They're not backing down, not yet anyway.
Okay. Before going to the break, Namrata, your comment about the Carrie Lam has now is being said as a puppet of the BJP, of Beijing. I'm sorry, and though she said that she wants to heal the wounds and work with it in tandem with the people of the Hong Kong. Will it be difficult for her if she really wants to work for the pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong?
See, I mean, she definitely won't work for the pro-democracy people because she has been carefully chosen. She is not an elected leader that she can, she can think about the people. And, if the tide is against something, she can, overrule what Beijing said. So she was already picked in March. And she was, there was also a tussle between Chang Da-chiang and Xi Jinping over her, over who will be the candidate.
Okay.
So finally, it is, I mean, they have chosen, they have zeroed down on a person, and she took her oath also in Mandarin, not in Cantonese. Not in Cantonese. Not in Cantonese, because Cantonese is the language that people speak in Hong Kong, and not Mandarin Chinese. So all these signs are obviously saying that she is obviously there because Xi Jinping wanted her to be.
Okay.
And the policies that the statements that you see, and especially Chang Da-chiang, his statement, that he's saying that Hong Kong has to enact their national security law according to Beijing.
Okay.
And they have they must do it. That's the words that he, word that he used. So they probably have no liberty as far as choosing their national, their executive is concerned. They have no, he first stated that the executive should be a patriot. Patriot obviously means pro-Beijing and pro-CCP. And now he's saying even the governing committee should be constituted of pro-patriots.
Okay.
So it's like,
it's a kind of they can vote, but they can't choose their own candidate. I mean, they have the candidate would be chosen by the Beijing.
Yes.
Only the people of the Hong Kong can vote only.
Yes, and also like that is the fight that they are having, and especially Joshua Wong, who is the face of the pro-democracy movement. So he's just a 20-year-old person, and he is the face of this movement. And also, if you see that. Everybody was saying that after 2014 they have been able to crush the movement. But if you see that they have kind of got into the Legislative Council. Nathan, who is their pro-democracy candidate, has actually been elected to the Legislative Council, and he's the youngest one to be elected in that Legislative Council.
There is time for a short break, and what will happen if China backs off and would be a political or economic ramification of Hong Kong is snatched away its democratic rights? We will discuss after the short break. Hong Kong, which is marking its 20th anniversary of return to Chinese rule, but the protesters are taking to the streets about China's policy or China's backing off, the gradually backing off of the promise or the agreement, in written agreement, especially. Ranjit, it seems quite unlikely that China will back off. And what will happen to the people who are fighting or taking to the streets?
I fear that there's going to be a crackdown. If you look at all the indicators from the past, the Chinese have a particular way of dealing with these things, and they're ruthless. Tiananmen Square, Tibet, the whole history of it. I mean, they consider people to be expendable. I mean, it's a pity, but it would be a mistake for us to think that the Chinese have the same kind of humanitarian values as we or other people have. They can be extremely ruthless when it comes to maybe a perceived threat to the unity of the state and so on. Now, I bet that you see many of these people have surrendered actually, and they know there's no point carrying this thing on. So they must be trying to negotiate some kind of a deal with them.
Okay.
Now, if they are unable to do that, the Chinese will make an example of them. Don't try this kind of stunt again.
Okay.
So we can see a tightening. I mean, even if you look at even recent history of the crackdowns in Tibet, some of the stories coming out of Tibet are pretty gruesome.
Yeah, that's right.
So we hear about this from the Tibetans through their channels, but there's no reason to think that it's going to be any different either in Hong Kong or possibly even in Taiwan. We don't know the future of Taiwan because, like Namrata pointed out, they're forcing all the embassies to shut down the missions. Wherever they are. Kenya was the latest. So It's a very concerted move. They are determined that their writ will run within China, within the neighborhood, and so on.
So virtually, China is arm twisting the many countries. I mean, if you fall in line, otherwise they face the consequences.
Well, they look at South China Sea. They did what they had to do. They built that island right in the middle of nowhere. And they didn't bother that Vietnam or the Philippines or Malaysia, they all had claims to South China Sea.
Okay. Namrata, I mean, what will happen in terms, let's say, there is a trend. I mean, this is one set of argument that China is not allowing to enjoy the Hong Kongers the kind of autonomy they were enjoying. But the one set of argument is also that many of the people of the Hong Kong are also going to the mainland China to study and to find the opportunity, because the kind of growth has taken place since last 20 years. Do you find this would be a dampener to the people who are fighting for the cause?
See, there'll always be like two set of people. And in Hong Kong also, if you see right now, when Xi Jinping actually visited Hong Kong, there were parades of people who were singing patriotic songs, who were hailing China. There were interpretations that obviously most of them were from mainland China, but we do not know how many locals were included in that.
Okay.
But there were such kind of demonstration, because this is kind of a painting that China wants to present, that look, Xi Jinping went to Hong Kong and people are supporting it.
But the status of the Hong Kong was unique only because of the status the Hong Kong was enjoying as the economic hub of that region. But China is now already an economic superpower. So what is the necessity of having a place which is not falling in line?
Yes, and obviously, see, China has a very specific policy. If you see, whenever they want to kind of assimilate a place, in their own culture, they'll always ask the mainlander Chinese to go and marry in those areas. If you see also the statements, not many people might have read it, but they very clearly say, because obviously when you go and marry amongst the people, if you have maybe a Taiwanese or maybe a Hong Kong person, if their mothers are like from mainland China,
the level of descent comes down.
Yeah, and the kind of upbringing you give them would be very different. So the pro-democracy movement, I'm sure it's not crushed, but how China will go ahead with it, maybe use a carrot and stick policy, or maybe just as said, they might just crack down, have a major crackdown like it had in Tiananmen Square. So I think we all have to maybe wait and watch, because right now they have Xi Jinping has just visited. Carrie Lam is still, looking for people to make her cabinet.
But China can be compelled to fall in line in terms to follow the written agreement between the Britain and the because few voices have come from the Great Britain that the China cannot do it. China cannot back off from its agreement. Do you see the possibility?
Who will challenge that? Will Britain actually come out and challenge it? Will they take them to the International Court of Justice that they are backing off from the agreement that they signed? So who will do that? I think the onus only lies with the Hong Kong people. But how long they can protest and how long will Beijing let them protest? That's the question.
It seems quite unlikely. I mean, who will come in support of the people of the Hong Kong?
Nobody, because of the huge investments. I mean, China has become the manufacturing, the factory to the whole world. So nobody wants to challenge challenge a country which has so much of a stake, where they have so much stake in their own economic prosperity. China also has several $1 trillion worth of deposits. Nobody wants to disturb that. It's a military power, growing military power, and it has the kind of economic cloud that, the future growth in near future is going to be dependent on China. And the Chinese want to make sure that they remain that engine of growth that the economists talk about. So, which is one reason why, they keep poking India. They try to cut India down in different fora. We are not allowed. This nuclear,
the energy.
But China is not also showing any sign of backing off in terms of the US sent its warship in the South China Sea region. China showed its aircraft carrier.
Yes.
That's a warning to the Americans not to open up a front there. It's not like the China of about 25 years ago. I mean, ultimately it was US under Kissinger that brought China out of this. And Deng Xiaoping saw a great opportunity here. I mean, the liberalization really worked. They planned it out, but they planned it in a way that the Americans didn't expect, or the Western world did not expect. And it's no use saying that, well, you said this about Hong Kong. They say these are irrelevant now. That's what they say.
What do you have to say about the reluctance of US or coming out from the Asian region? The US is pulling out from the Asia. Is the reason that China is growing and China is showing its muscle to the mainly its adversaries?
See, it's just now with Trump's coming that you see, how everything is changing. Before that, US said pivot to Asia. China started doing all this when Obama was in power. It's not that it has just started doing it as soon as Trump has come, because it's only with the coming of Trump that even countries like Japan, Taiwan, Australia, who relied on the US for a lot of security.
But the language has changed dramatically since last couple of months when the Trump came into the power. I mean, the kind of narrative, the kind of semantics are coming from Beijing is very, you call unprecedented.
Yeah, I think not in the couple of months. I think ever since Xi Jinping came to power, you see, it's not that he came to power and suddenly this. I mean, there has been a steady growth towards it. The way they are making statements, even about Taiwan, they made a statement that we will ensure the reunification happens, even if we have to use non-peaceful methods.
Okay. So in the last, I mean, do we have a reason to worry about the kind of aggression that China is showing? All its neighbors, we are facing in Doklam Valley, I mean, the Chumbi Valley especially. Do we have a reason to worry? And then what will happen to all the countries? Will they come together against China? I mean, all the countries who are facing the flag from the China.
See, when it came to One Belt, One Road, it was only India that stopped its car.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of countries have seen that. And they are also trying to analyze the OBOR. And even EU backed down, they did not pass the rail line.
Yeah.
They also stopped that. And a lot of countries have started talking about this OBOR. And I think I don't know, but I think it's right time for countries to, the way India has stood up to China, at least stand up for the major things. I mean, economy is one thing, diplomatic relations is one thing, but standing up to something that is the core value to you, like sovereignty is the core issue with China. So why not with India? India also
probably
has
the waiting and watching which way the wind blows. Final question, I mean, the South China region or that region can be the flashpoint in the future because the kind of aggression that China is showing is not going down very well.
No, definitely, because the Americans have a lot of interest in the Pacific. And you have countries like Australia, you have Japan, South Korea. These are countries that have been traditionally opposed to China. But the flashpoint could equally come from closer to our own borders.
Yeah,
I mean, I think we ought to watch what's happening with Bhutan, for example. They're bullying Bhutan, actually. The Bhutanese do not have an army to withstand. Yes. So they're looking up to India, and whether we can protect them or not is something that we'll have to see in the coming.
But the kind of response that we have given, we have, I mean, the kind of the willpower we have shown is also...
It's good so far, but I don't know where this is heading. No one can predict. The Chinese may pull out or they may press this. I mean, they're building a road down the Chumbi Valley. It can't be a road to nowhere. It has to lead somewhere.
Yeah.
It can only lead down Siliguri and into Calcutta. That's the only logical thing,
Okay. So let's hope which way the wind blows, and thank you very much, Hanumda, and thank you very much, Ranjit, for coming here. So the road to reunification between Hong Kong and mainland China has been a bumpy one over the past 20 years, but since last 20 years, mainland China has also changed tremendously. As per the reports, now more Hong Kongers are going north, that means to China, for the better opportunities, but that can be the ploy or the tact of the China. So the China will keep its promise seems far-fetched when it's not keeping the promise on border understanding on the LAC with India. President standoff is the result of pushing the boundaries gradually. When China is not accepting the verdict of the international International Court of Justice on South China Sea, then it seems very unlikely that the Hong Kong will get the due rights. We have to keep in mind that the only geopolitical situation can save the Hong Kong if the balance tilts in its favor. Otherwise, many protectors of the democracy of the world have not come for the rescue of the pro-democracy movements in many countries. In fact, US and UK and other countries did not do much to restore democracy in countries like Pakistan, Iraq and Saudi Arabia. So in fact, they were in cahoots with the authoritarian regimes of these countries. So the future of the pro-democracy movements in Hong Kong seems bleak, and that's a harsh reality at the moment. That's all we have in this